everyone, and welcome back to my YouTube channel. Today we're going to be talking about
evolution.
No, not like in Pokemon. This is the real world, folks.
Evolution is the change of allele frequencies in a population over time. The allele frequency in one generation may be different from its parent generation. Changes over many generations may result in a completely different species. This explains, for example, how humans evolved from apes. But evolution isn't linear. It doesn't move straight up from one step to another. Evolution has branches. Each branch on the tree of evolution ends with a species, and the tree is constantly growing. Very slowly, but it's growing all right.
So how does evolution actually happen? There are 4 major modes by which evolution occurs.
The first mode is genetic drift, which is a change in the allele frequencies of a population due to random chance. For example, a tornado named Emmy might just accidentally sweep up most of an animal population. The allele frequency will now reflect whatever is left over in the gene pool, thanks to the random chance of what the tornado swept up. The second mode of evolution is gene flow, which is the change in allele frequencies as 2 or more populations mix together, creating greater diversity within the gene pool. Next is mutation, which is a random change in the genes of an individual. This change could harm or improve an individual's reproductive success. If the mutation is beneficial, it could be passed on to future generations, thus changing the gene pool and resulting in the evolution of the species. The fourth process by which evolution occurs is called natural selection. There are 3 conditions that natural selection is based on. The first is variation, meaning that differences must exist between individuals. The second is heritability, meaning that parents must be able to pass on traits under natural selection so they can be selected for or against. The third is differential reproductive success, which is measured by the amount of offspring an individual has that survive relative to other members of the species.
So who figured out all this natural selection stuff anyway? Well, it was a very important scientist named Emmy Seto. Wait, what?
Emmy, why'd you change my script?
What script? What are you talking about?
It was actually a very important scientist named Charles Darwin. He came up with the idea of natural selection and coined the phrase survival of the fittest. No, Emmy, not that type of fitness. We're talking about the biological kind, meaning your ability to survive long enough to reproduce fertile offspring.
And unless you bump up the weight, I don't think you're ever finding a mate.
There are 3 main types of natural selection.
The first one is directional selection. This means that only members of a population from one end of the spectrum are selected for, while the other end is selected against. For example, giraffes evolved to have long necks because their food source was high up on the trees. Because of this, long-necked giraffes would be fit to survive, while short-necked giraffes would die off. The next one is stabilizing selection, which works to reduce variation in a population. Selection for a particular allele is for the mean of the population. An example of this is a human's birth weight, because being too big and being too small are both disadvantages. It's best to be somewhere in between.
The biggest baby of all, however, is Emmy. Somehow she managed to survive.
Last is disruptive selection.
Mitochondria is the powerhouse of the cell.
Thanks, Emmy. That was very disruptive.
Disruptive selection means that the 2 extremes on the spectrum do better than forms in the middle. For example, a species of snail could live in an environment with either dark or light colors. The snails must have either a dark-colored shell or a light-colored shell, because a shell with a color somewhere in the middle will stand out to predators. Disruptive selection can often result in speciation if the 2 extremes evolve independently.
There are 2 more types of selection that complete natural selection.
The first is sexual selection. Individuals will not always have the maximum number of offspring that they possibly can, so sexual selection determines why some individuals have greater reproductive success than others. Sexual selection occurs by two processes: within-sex competition and choice. Within-sex competition often occurs with males, at least for mammals. Males can reproduce as many times as they want since they don't have a gestation period. Because of this, males are the ones that always compete for the attention of the females. Females are more choosy because they invest a lot in each reproductive effort. Because of this, males have to evolve to develop adaptations that will make them more attractive to the females. An example of this is the fact that many birds have colorful feathers, mating dances, and songs. The sexually selected traits that are a result of female choice are called honest indicators. The final method of selection is called artificial selection. This occurs when selection is controlled by humans. For example, many breeds of dogs have been artificially selected to look how people want them to or to have particular skills.
Evolution tends to follow certain patterns.
Patterns?
Yes, Emmy, patterns.
I love patterns!
The first pattern is called coevolution. This is when two species evolve mutually. For example, predator and prey will continue to evolve back and forth to be the fittest to survive. If the prey gets faster, then so will Emmy. The next pattern is called convergent evolution. This means that two different species will adapt to the environment in the same way, even if they are unrelated. For example, bats and birds are not related, but they both have wings and are able to fly.
Whee!
The next pattern is called divergent evolution. This is when two related species evolve to become less similar. Finally, we have parallel evolution. Two species can either be related or unrelated, but they respond to environmental conditions in a similar way.
Okay, we have just one more thing to talk about. Almost done.
Yeah!
Speciation is how new species evolve. There are two main ways that speciation occurs. The first is allopatric speciation. This means that interbreeding stops because a barrier of some sort splits a population into two groups. The second is sympatric speciation. This means that interbreeding ceases even though there is no physical barrier preventing it. They just don't like each other anymore.
Oh, okay.
Okay, so that's the end of this video. I hope you learned a little something about evolution thanks to Emmy's wonderful acting. Make sure to like and subscribe and leave a comment down below. Bye!